Hello everybody. Next up we play host to Liverpool at the Olympic. Kick-off on Sunday is at 4:30 p.m, with TV coverage being provided by Sky. Eyes Up Mother Brown will be on air from 4ish, possibly on even the same day as the match. So Liverpool then. Well, it's the source of much amusement to all right and proper football supporters outside Norway, Basingstoke, and those bits of Surrey that aren't Man United strongholds, that they're struggling a bit. Their last win in the league came back on the 19th of December, well, until they played Spurs the other night. Their last 6 games have seen them win at Spurs, draw at home to West Brom and Man United, and away to Newcastle, and lose away at Southampton and at home to Burnley, which, at the moment, leaves them in 4th spot. That's 1 place and 2 points above us at the time of writing, though Saturday's matches may have changed that by the time this goes to press. Whichever way you look at it, they'll be hoping for an improvement in form before the Super League cabal withdraw their kind offer of about £300 million. They went out of the cup the other week against Man United, Fernandez's free kick separating the sides. The Liverpool Echo went apoplectic, claiming that the foul that led to the free kick was a dive. It wasn't. And publishing lots of sarky comments about Man United and Ref Clemson in a manner more redolent of a kid's website than a regional newspaper. Scousers will always tell you what a great sense of humour they all have, despite all the evidence to the contrary. Clearly the concept of irony has yet to make it across the city boundary from the outside world then. Daisy, the socially distant, support-bubbling personal assistant with a beautiful smile, has never had it so good in a winter transfer window, Liverpool being yet another club who haven't dusted off the chequebook yet. There are reasons for that, obviously, and I'll touch on those later. In the meantime, Daisy is relaxing on the chaise longue while I feed her the occasional grape. They do have a number of injuries, most of which seem to be in defence, so start licking your lips, Antonio. It's notable that Fabio Tavares prefers to go by his chosen name, Fabinho, presumably in order to avoid being confused with the Rochdale striker of the same name. I'm surprised they haven't marked his absence by releasing a charity record called Heaven Must Be Missing a Brazilian right-back or central defender. His nickname around Anfield, I kid you not, is said to be The Hoover because he sweeps everything up. That Scouse sense of humour, eh? That may well be the case, but I can think of 1 or 2 in the past at Anfield who might have earned that nickname for other reasons. They've been forced into playing Jordan Henderson at the back of late. Henderson's partner at the back at the toilet bowl the other night was Joel Matip. Well, it was until he succumbed to the curse of the central defender and was replaced by Nat Phillips, having picked up an ankle injury that looks as if it's a potential long-termer. It seems that where central defence is concerned, wearing a red shirt is akin to wearing the same colour in an episode of Star Trek. Clipperty has been a bit reticent as to whether the lack of central defensive resources will lead them to making any new signings, though clearly he would like to have some cover in there. The gist of his ramblings on the subject the other night were along the lines of, has anyone got a good centre-back going cheap? It was the latter part of that comment that raised an eyebrow in these parts. OK, the phrase he used was, at a reasonable price, but that suggests that a tighter rein is being kept on the purse strings than has hitherto been the case. At the very least, it suggests that the phrase money no object won't be coming into play any time soon. In the Spurs match the other night, boy do I have to suffer in the name of research, it saw a couple of tactical innovations on behalf of the Scousers. Clearly Kane was targeted for some form of treatment, which was rather clever since taking him out of the equation also removed Son as a threat. 2 for the price of 1, if you like. The other tactic, which was perfect for playing Tottenham, was to play the ball into the so-called corridor of uncertainty and watch the defenders leave it to each other to sort out. Inevitably, neither did, and throw in some ghastly goalkeeping as well, and 3 goals are there for the taking. The resulting celebrations reminded me of that time they went over to bow in front of the fans after scraping a home draw to West Brom a couple of years ago. The celebrations seemed out of proportion to the achievement that they followed and were representative more of a palpable sense of relief. Given Joe Biden's age, it would not have been beyond the bounds of possibility that the joke about there having been 2 US presidents since they last won might have been upgraded to the tune of 1 president. So there's been a big release of pressure. Of course, that also works in our favour to a certain degree. We have over the years been the biggest sequence-busting team ever, Not won in ages, play West Ham. Striker not scored since telly was in black and white, starter against West Ham. Not picked up a point in London in a match on a Tuesday, well, you get the picture. So the fact that they've finally won means at least one worry is taken out of the system. Enough of them. Let's take a look at the wild and wacky world of association football, shall we? Soon we will be looking at the arrival of concussion substitutes in the Premier League. This seems a sensible thing to have. The temptation to try and patch up a player to stay on when all three normal subs have been used would therefore be removed. Of course, as a cynic, I can see a time coming where a centre-back goes down clutching his head when his team's chasing a game. The concussion sub just happens to be a striker who gets the equaliser. Far-fetched? Well, we already see defenders clutching heads in goalmouth scrambles to break up play. Abroad, and in the Milan derby, Lukaku and Ibrahimovic picked up a one-match ban each for a spat that contained what appeared to be racist comments on the part of Ibrahimovic. At first thought, the ban seemed to be symptomatic of how seriously football authorities sometimes treat these matters, but it appears that Ibrahimovic's words will be the subject of a separate inquiry. Ibrahimovic himself commented that there is no room for racism in Zlatan's world, something that in a proper world would result in an automatic ban for prattishly talking about oneself in the third person. At this point, Preview Percy would like to move on to us. I'm sure I won't have been the first to suggest to anybody that the result the other night didn't come anywhere near to reflecting just how dominant we were against Palace. 6-7, 8-1 wouldn't have been an unfair score, and the look of frustration on Antonio's face as he sat behind the dugout was the look of someone who knew that he should be sitting there with a match ball on his lap. It was a fine team performance, and there was some slick one-touch passing going on that fair took the breath away at times. There are little partnerships building up all over the pitch. Bowen and Soufal work well together, Fornals and Cresswell ditto, and of course Ogbonna and Dawson have been a revelation. Having mentioned Soufal, one must make note of the way he dealt with Zaha. Of course, Zaha didn't help himself, strutting around the place as if he was being forced to do community service by playing for a side undeserving of his talents. Whilst he does have his moments, he is in fact a pretty average player, playing at exactly the level his attitude deserves. Meat and drink to Soufal. Actually, it wouldn't surprise me if Zaha walked about talking about himself in the third person. Moving on, we have transfer news. Daisy tells me that the deal to bring in Jesse Lingard on loan from Man United is now complete. My instinct at the moment tend towards trusting the manager, so that if Mr. Moyes wants the player, then, well, fine. However, it has been suggested that the arrival of Lingard would end the prospect of us signing a proper striker during this window. Now, to a certain extent, I can acknowledge a sort of logic to our not bringing a striker at this point. It's not a logic I have an awful lot of time for, but in the interest of balance, I will explain how the owners may be thinking at this point. Firstly, in normal times, the January window is not a great time to be plugging striker-shaped holes in a squad, especially when everybody knows you've got no strikers. Secondly, and you may have noticed, these are not normal times. We've been bitten on the backside in the past, signing players on the strength of video clips and show reels, and I sincerely hope that nobody is considering bringing in a player without actually watching them. Which, given that even if one could travel to watch a player these days, actually getting in a ground might be an issue. Thirdly, the days of nipping across the channel and picking up a decent uncapped player with good potential are now gone. Brexit means that EU citizens, with the exception of those from Ireland, need to get enough points to qualify for a work permit. So the January window is a pain. Add to that the fact that we are, fingers crossed, clutching rabbits' feet, etc., maybe, possibly, just about safe. The thinking might well be that we don't really need a striker for the time being. We should hold on till the summer when things get a lot easier. Now, as I say, I've got no evidence that this is the owner's mindset, though past experience suggests that there is a decent possibility that this is the case. However, it's not a policy with which I can find myself agreeing. Prior to Spurs versus Liverpool, we were in 4th place. Now, none of us are getting carried away and saying, let's go so-called Champions League, eh? But the sensible approach would at least be go for finishing as high as possible. The one big area where we have no real depth is up front. Now, it's entirely possible that Antonio will continue to impress, and he'll get through the rest of the season with his hamstrings intact. However, it's not something I'd really like to place my traditional £2.50 wager on at Mr. Winston's Turf Accountancy Emporium. However, it appears that the board may well be gambling on the end of season place money, and everything else, including the chance of European qualification, on precisely those things. Let's move on to the prediction. It's a simple one this week. They will get at least one goal courtesy of a refereeing decision that VAR will mysteriously fail to overturn. They always do against us. We're getting used to it now. We'll get the hump and turn the adversity into a positive force, and we'll turn that into at least a point. So stick the £2.50 that was going to go on a memorial plaque for Virgil van Dijk, the Premier League's first injured player, on a 2-2 draw, please, Mr. Winston. Enjoy the game.